Welcome to Strictly From Nowhere, a podcast for tech founders by tech founders. Each episode explores the trials, tribulations, successes, and some comedy as we follow innovators and their journey from zero to market. I'm thoroughly excited for this one today. This is a gentleman that I have grown to respect and has become a new friend and a new piece of my network. He's been at the helm of New York marketing agency for close to 3 decades. His often upbeat work has been featured in Rolling Stones, the book 505 Weirdest Websites Ever, and Fangoria, as well as a plethora of other media outlets. You know, after the realization that the entire marketing industry had gone insane, he retooled a little bit. We're going to get into what that retooling looks like. You know, he reimagined and reemerged as something different, something more powerful, and something that the marketing world has just really never seen. You know, he's eager to share his new vision and embark on the world and spark a new revolution for marketing. And it's led to something that's pretty inspirational and something that I have adopted in my own methodology and my own pursuits. He's created something called Marketing for Supervillains. He lives in a supervillain lair on Long Island, which he's dubbed the Chainsaw Estates, with his beautiful trophy wife, Florence. James Wroblewski, welcome to Strictly From Nowhere. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be your friend, to be in your sphere, and now to include you in the next best episode. Welcome, man.
Thank you so much. I don't know if I can follow up that intro, but I'll try. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, I'll lead the horse to water, so don't you worry, and you just make sure you give me the realest and rawest supervillainous that you possibly can. You know, I want to get into some origin stuff. I personally always love to hear where folks come from, what their influences are. You and me are on the same island. We've grown up and have shared the Long Island Expressway together for our whole lives, but your upbringing is different from mine, and your influences have impacted your life differently from mine. So I'm really interested, where were you born? Where were you raised? Where do you currently reside? And where did that choice come into? And, you know, how does your influences kind of perpetuate your experience as a marketer, as a professional, as a technologist, and so forth?
Yeah, so lot of questions there. Let me see if I can answer them all. So born in Flushing, Queens, grew up a little bit in Belrose, Queens, and if anybody knows anything about Long Island, it's some of the most expensive real estate in the world. I don't know why, but as housing prices continue to go up, I moved from Queens to Ronkonkoma to Mastic Beach. So you kind of keep going out east until you end up in the ocean. So currently, I'm in Mastic Beach, New York. Kind of a quiet beachy town, because I am definitely, if you want to consider me a country boy in the state of New York, I can't be cooped up. I need to just drive, get out of my car, park, and go get something to eat. I can't wait for parking. That would drive me insane. I'm claustrophobic in nature. Yeah, I mean, I had mentioned that we both are on Long Island. And Long Island, aside from its real estate, is a very unique place. We're about 60 miles, or probably a little closer, to the mecca of all marketing, which is New York City. So you would think like we're kind of like just on the outskirts of, everything you've seen in Mad Men. But Long Island is just this weird ecosystem that is completely different from New York City, in some good ways and some bad ways. So being different, running a business differently, in anything you've ever seen on TV, anything they've taught you in college, Long Island is different, and we've had to adapt to that. And I don't even know if I could put it into words. It's just different. So that said, started my marketing agency. I actually went to college to become a physical therapist. I got a job in a hospital, and I soon realized that I chose a field that I would literally be walking people in circles in slow motion for 8 hours a day. And the worst part of it all was the small talk. I am not a small talker. So imagine every hour on the hour, you get a new patient, You talk about their grandkids. You're doing everything in slow motion, and then an hour goes by, and you do it again for 40 hours a week. And I don't know if you could tell by my background, I tend to like the more eclectic, more offbeat, more lively things. So I had minored in art, and I remembered the one of the local proprietors of a comic book shop on Long Island got into an accident, and he came into the hospital, and we hit it off, obviously. And he's like, "What the hell are you doing working here? Like, why are you here? Like, no disrespect, like you do not belong here doing this." So yeah, I got an AOL disc in the mail, and I was like, "Wow, this internet thing is kind of cool. I think there's a future in it." And I went to a tech school for 9 months. Took every course they offered. It was like an all-you-can-eat buffet, and just took them over and over and over, and hit the ground running, building websites for people in 1999 that probably really didn't need websites. It was, a luxury, not a need. And back then you'd launch a website for someone, and 7 years would go by, and you'd finally hear from them again with an update, because it just wasn't that important to their businesses, unlike it is now.
Well, I have some questions. Like your interest, the origin of the story is to me, I know you, is quite obvious. But I'm interested in like the intersection of your interests. You have a deep interest in art. You have a deep interest in, obviously based on your background in all things carnival, in the weird oddities. You're deeply passionate about music. How do these things kind of influence you and your business and your clients mostly?
Yeah, so I think the origin of marketing for Supervillains and Decommoditized happened when COVID happened. Everybody kind of did a little soul searching. So I took a step back, and on the business side, I said, in the past 25 years, what were the projects that not only were most fulfilling for me, but made my clients with those projects the most money possible? And they all kind of had a similar link, where I took kind of a boring project or a boring product, and I injected life into it and made it kind of have its own personality. So it's working with a few coaches, a few gurus, and they're like, "That sounds great, but you can't call people boring. No one's going to self-identify as like, I'm a boring business. I need you." So went to the well, and try to figure out how to word it a little more kindly. And I came up with the concept of a business being commoditized, which I felt I was after 25 years. So I came up with the term decommoditized. And after Microsoft Word told me over and over and over that decommoditized wasn't a word, I did what any self-respecting supervillain would do, and I trademarked it. So now I own the word decommoditized. And yeah, I mean, my main coach, Nick, is one of the guys that's like, he kind of like an art teacher. It's why. Well, I did this, I made this red, and I like it this way. Well, why? And you just keep asking the why, the why, the why. And that was kind of the process of the book, going deeper, deeper, deeper. Why do you have an autographed picture of Weird Al, but instead of his autograph, it says Joyce DeWitt? Why? What made you think of that? Why did you think of that at 10 years old, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think one of the things that kind of, leads me to the more offbeat things in life is just, I'm gonna say I fear, but I despise repetition, right? So I was there for WrestleMania 1. If anybody remembers Hulk Hogan, Cyndi Lauper, The Rock and Wrestling Connection, I was probably like the only 8-year-old in the world that didn't like Hulk Hogan, because it was the same match over and over. It was like he'd get beat up, he'd Hulk up, drop the leg, 1, 2, 3. So I was just so tired of the repetition. I always kind of leaned more towards anybody that went up against Hulk Hogan was a bad guy. So I found myself, aligning with the bad guys, hoping for the unpredictable, hoping for anything that was not obvious. So I think, without deep psychological therapy, I think that's kind of like one of the reasons I kind of gravitate to the more offbeat things.
I'll go back just a little bit in what you just said about the boring business. Shout out to Cody Sanchez. She's like the empress of boring businesses right now, and giving the regular common folks ideas about taking over some of these commoditized businesses and giving them new life. I find it so funny that like you could have very much villainously said, we're gonna breathe life back into boring businesses. Instead, you go an entirely different route, and then put the trademark stamp on exactly that. Yeah, we're going to get into decommoditized. I think it's a really important topic, um, just generally for the average business owner, just generally for the average marketer. There are some, I'll let you do the introduction, but there are some very impactful, revolutionary brands that are on the market today, historically on the market, that couldn't meet a better ethos of what it means to be decommoditized, what it means to be a supervillain. We'll get into that because I have some questions. But I want to start maybe with a little bit more um, tougher question, tougher for you, more enjoyable for the audience, which is uh, over your 25 years and kind of thinking the way you do and attracting some of the customers that you do. I want to hear about some experience that is just going to shock me. Like I have not been doing this for long enough to have as many customers as you have seen, or as many personalities, as many different industries. You are definitely quite a bit further ahead than me. And I know you have some horror stories. So I'd love to, just for shock value purpose specifically, I'd love to hear a couple.
Sure, sure. So, one of the so I give a speech called "How to Become a Marketing Supervillain," and in that speech, my opening question is, "What's the one thing that separates?" According to the Joker, what's the one thing that separates him from the Batman? I don't know if you know the answer.
One bad
Go
day.
ahead. Yeah, very good, my
My
man.
wife,
So
my wife will
we're
be proud of
all
me.
so according to the Joker, we're all one bad day away from birthing our inner supervillain. So, with my ethos and my, the way I gravitate towards things, I had realized after many, many years, all of a sudden hit me like a lightning bolt that me trying to grow my own business, that I had become a sellout. And my one bad day was this gentleman came in, seemed completely normal. He was an engineer for a world renowned building, right? So you look at this guy, he's completely normal. And he comes in and payroll's right around the corner. And, he's telling me about, some wacky stuff. And I tell him, I don't think we're the right fit for you. And he goes, oh no, you guys, this was meant to be. You guys are the right fit. He wants to pay us for discovery. So I'm like, all right, what's the harm in getting paid discovery? So the first red flag was that he insists on paying in multiples of 11. So he would bring me envelopes of cash, $1,100, $1,111.11 in each envelope. So he'd hand me these envelopes, right? $2,222.22. All right, we're getting into it. Then he says, this is probably a red flag for anyone that's been in the business long enough. Before I tell any of you anything about, my business, I need you to sign an NDA, right? Because his ideas are so precious. And on top of that, usually a blanket NDA covers the entire agency. But no, anybody that watches my presentation for paid discovery, I want them to sign their own individual NDAs. But to make it worth their while, I'm going to pay anyone for their NDA, which I don't even know if it's legal, but that became the least of my concern because everyone got $100, $111.11 each. And he brought the dimes and the pennies, right? All right. So payroll's right around the corner. We got money in the bank. Everything's good. And he comes in, and this reasonable guy with some crazy ideas is wearing a gray sock over his head, headphones, and he proceeds to walk in, and I have a video proof of this. And usually this stuff doesn't get recorded. He has a sack, and he takes out of a sack a stuffed goose, not speaking. He's unwrapping golden eggs and putting them on a silver platter that he took out of the bag. And he finishes his little presentation and he salutes everyone again without speaking and walks out the door. So it's very, very funny. But as I'm looking around at all my staff who are like really, really good at what they do, and they're like rolling their eyes and they puzzled looks, I realize that I am doing stuff that I shouldn't be doing for money. I'm a sellout. right? So yeah, payroll's around the corner, but I need to do something drastically different to attract more meaningful work and attract the right type of people. So that was my one bad day. That was like a lightning bolt. Like, yeah, this is pretty funny, but yeah, it's not what I want for the future.
I mean, at this point, you're running a marketing agency for decades at this point. I mean, you've seen some absolutely incredible things, and this is an amazing segue into really the story behind Decommoditize. And I want to get into a little bit about not only where decommoditized kind of comes from. We've heard a little bit about that, but your story to me is gospel. Like I try as an agency owner as well to try and find the right work. We literally try to turn away as much work as we bring in. And the right work is not only reputationally responsible, it's invigorating to our team. I try to work with businesses that have a mission or a cause that's greater than their bottom line, something that they align with at a leadership level, at a community level. We try to find the right customers, the right campaigns, the right initiatives to deploy our talent to. We did that from wisdom. I've heard countless horror stories. I come from 7 generations of entrepreneurship. I've heard horror stories of bad partners and bad business deals and tough customers and things like that. And you're just the same, and I think what's really interesting is you have evolved your business after decades. Lots of folks get marginalized. They commoditize themselves. They end up with a reputation some way, somehow. And what I find very fascinating about you, Jesse, is you have branded all of this. Like you have come up with a concept, you take it on a road show, you have a baked and very informed talk track presentation. Um, this is all about how the average business can rethink the way that they serve their customers, their employees, their mission and focus. So I want to get a little bit deeper into decommoditize and what does that really mean? And how can like the average business that's thinking about evolving their marketing motion, evolving their leadership motion, like what does decommoditize really mean?
Yeah. So when you're a business or you're a product and there becomes so many choices in the industry that people or general public can't really tell the difference as to why you're special compared to the other guy, you've officially become a commodity, right? So I liken it, I kind of pull on the heartstrings. Typically, when people start their business, there's a sense of pride, right? So I'm the only one that can solve these problems for my clients. I'm doing, great work. I'm working for a cause, right? To take your lingo. And then all of a sudden, somewhere along the way, they're doing it, and then people don't necessarily appreciate your special skills because there's so many more options in the vertical. And soon it becomes, yeah, you're the guy that can solve my problems, but why does it cost this when I can get it for that? Right? So I liken it to business owners losing some of that pride they had when they started and figuring out a way to reclaim their leadership position, re-inject that pride, make them stand out like they did back in the early days when they started and there wasn't so much competition. So that's kind of the emotional tug on anyone that feels like, my business isn't the same as when I started. It's a little less gratifying, a little demoralizing. So if that pain is strong enough, probably a conversation with Decommoditized is a great first step.
It couldn't apply to what I do more. I'm a marketer by trade. Like I'm a marketer, I'm a salesman, I'm an extrovert, and it's very easy to get marginalized. It's very easy to jump on bandwagons. It's very easy to opt from current solutions, current campaigns, current platforms, current strategies. You trend hop. And I have always been against the grain. I'm always like play to where the puck is going rather than where it currently is. I find that the theory of decommoditization has been something that's I couldn't really articulate myself. I never could put a finger on well, how do I put my thoughts, my strategy, my perspective in a box and put a bow on it. And when I learned about decommoditized and when I read Marketing for Supervillains, little plug, it clicked. It clicked. When I read this book, I told you I read it in a single sitting. I've never read a book in a single sitting. You can ask my wife, you could ask my parents, you could ask all my teachers. I've literally, I'm a Cliff Notes guy. I'm like, get me through this as fast as possible. Give me the information I need to know, and I'll fill in the gaps from my own experience and knowledge. I've lots and lots of failures, lots of bones in closets, and all sorts of things that I probably should have just read it from end to end. I would have saved myself struggle. This is one of the only books in my life that I have read entirely end to end, and it is probably the only book that I read end to end in a single sitting. I literally didn't work that day. I was late to going to sleep that night. I think it took me like a total of 7 hours to get through. I just could not put the book down because it spoke to me. It is everything that I have tried to articulate for my own motion, my own passions, my own experiences, and it put blood into the body, and it really made sense to me. And I think for, the average individual that is looking to create a competitive business, for the average legacy entrepreneur or business owner or leader that is trying to remain relevant or trying to find new avenue for innovation or trying to invigorate a legacy team that might be feeling a little stale or might be dragging feet a little bit, it really comes down to the idea of decommoditization is finding new energy, new breath. It could be in an old boring business like we were saying before, but it could be the difference between a new marketing strategy or a new type of hire internally or a new type of customer opens up a brand new market for you. It doesn't necessarily need to be about marketing. That's our specialty, right? So like we hyper niche in the discussion, but sometimes we as businesses commoditize the inner workings of a business, and you just keep throwing bodies at a problem, or you keep just banging away at the same software that just has been giving you a headache for years, or whatever. So I find the idea of decommoditization to be much broader than obviously the hyper niche of your talk, which is really focused around the marketing motion and advertising, especially. I find that this is like a greater application. You can apply it to your personal life, to your relationships. I have a young son. I don't want to be a commoditized dad. I want to be an iconic dad. I really do. Like I just want to be different. And it's not different in a bad way. It's different in a unique and a memorable way, and one that imprints and you know gives my son, gives my customers, gives my friends, gives my network an opportunity to feel truly impacted by me. And I operate differently. And I salute you, man, because I for years was always like I just beat to my own drum. I don't know. I can't articulate it. Now I'm a member of a society. I'm an underground network of marketing supervillains, and I implore that folks think about decommoditization. So when I turn it back to you, I want to even take it a notch further. Give me an idea, if you're willing to share, of a business that was fully commoditized. And let's not use Generations Beyond, which is your agency. Let's use a customer experience where you're like, man, that business was stale, boring, had no soul, and how your theories have reinvigorated life to an organization.
Yeah. So everything you say, thank you for saying it, and I am happy we align on 100% of things. The common retort is, well, you know what, Justin, I am kind of, I'm an accountant. We do accounting. I'm not really special, right? So with that said, every single business, every single product, every single service in the world can be decommoditized, right? So if you think of, in the book, I use the ultimate commodity in the world, which is water. It's everywhere. In the developed world, it's 100% free and perfectly drinkable, yet we spent $17 billion on water last year. Why? All right. So I can go into reasons as to, how these companies are branding and selling the byproduct. They're not actually selling water. They're selling refrigeration. They're selling convenience. They're selling all these things, right? So anyone that's having trouble with decommoditizing themselves or thinking that they can't be decommoditized, or one of the other common pitfalls, which is what you're alluding to, is when people hear, or they're in this quagmire, they think they need to, and this is the new buzzword, they need to be disruptive, right? I need to take my business and do something no one's ever done before, disrupt the entire thing, completely transform. And you can take your existing core values, your core ethos, and just decommoditize your business just based on that. You don't have to invent new products, services, delivery methods, et cetera, et cetera. So that said, I guess one of the challenges we received over the years is probably my natural born enemy, being a creative person, is engineers. All right, so engineers do not give a shit about creativity. Like, they want the data fast and accurate, right? So I've had engineers walk into my office, and when I had my office pre-COVID, it was, the carnival exponentialized. And they would walk through the waiting room, walk into my office, have a meeting, not mention anything about the environment, walk out. I'm like, this is not going to last, right? So luckily, we found an engineer that had, took the blinders off. So they were heading to it was a raucous party, a trade show strictly for engineers, right? They were all selling different circuits, sensors, whatever. And they're like, look, we have this product. It's a sensor. We want everyone to talk about us at this trade show. It's like, it's not a lot of competition. There's not a lot of flashy girls and booth babes and fireworks going on. I said, all right, I'm going to take this sensor. You're giving me full creative freedom. And we basically created a script where we brought in a UFC fighter and a WWE wrestler into a wrestling ring, and we tied it all together. And flash forward, it was a huge hit at the trade show. They are now, from not existing 6-7 years ago, they're number one in the industry right now. And they credit a lot of that to that opening video.
I want to give a little bit of the secret sauce away because, like I said, I read the book Marketing for Supervillain. This is available. It's on Amazon. I'll even post the link in the show notes. This is digestible. You don't need some crazy marketing team. You don't need some innovative agency. You don't even need an in-house person dedicated to your marketing or advertisement motion. This is like a way of being and a way of operating and a way of, reinvigorating a business. I want to give a little bit away. So I'd love to hear a little bit about Marketing for Supervillains. It's a methodology for folks to try. It is literally a playbook, and it's implementable. And it's nothing that's like so grandiose or so difficult. Like, nobody needs to go and take a crazy course or do anything wild, which makes it so attainable and digestible. So I'd love you to give a small piece away. You could take it in any direction that you like, but I want to leave the audience with an immediate action item that puts them closer to the category of being a supervillain marketer.
Absolutely, yeah. So a lot of parallels. When I first came up with the concept of the supervillain thing, aside from my personal values, just started uncovering these parallels. So number one, being in the marketing industry for 25 years, I uncovered a statistic that 85% of people will outright reject a new idea on site, right? So imagine that you're a marketer. People never hire you to toe the company line, maintain the status quo. If you're getting hired, it's because we want some new idea. And you bring that new idea, exactly what you've been put on this earth for, into a boardroom, and 85% of the people that hired you are like, I don't know, I don't like you, right? That's enough to drive anybody into the world of supervillainy. But the real parallel is, I tell people, a lot of the book comes from an underdog mentality. So if you're entering a new vertical or you're existing in a vertical, there's usually always a mega brand, a name brand in that vertical. And that name brand is kind of synonymous, almost like a superhero, right? They've got huge public favor. They've got big muscles, which in marketing equates to big dollars. And most people, they make the common mistake of saying, all right, they've come to generations beyond. It's like, we're this company, but we want to look like them. We want to look, act, and feel like them. And number one, they're heavily under-resourced, which is natural for someone entering the market. And, their concept is, okay, they're doing social media, we're going to do social media. They're doing SEO, we're going to do SEO, pay-per-click, bah, 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 bah. So they're acting as if, and they're trying to outdo someone that has a huge head start on them, unlimited amount of resources. And if you think of it like most Hollywood supervillains, the supervillains usually don't have a ton of resources. They don't have big muscles, Adonis bodies. They have to use their brain to outsmart the superhero in order to take them down. So that kind of concept is, okay, let's put your business, let's put your marketing somewhere those guys are not, because you're never gonna topple them head to head. But unfortunately, most businesses are like, okay, we're gonna act like them and do everything they do, and somehow, some way, we're gonna become just as big. So that's kind of the ethos of being a marketing supervillain: acting differently, marketing differently, putting yourself where the other people are not. And then from there, most business books out there tell you, find your differentiator, find your USP. And then they go to the next chapter. It's like, that is a monumental task. And then there's a secondary monumental task of, if you uncover it on your own, you have to succinctly tell the entire world in your messaging why you're different. So I never found a book that said, okay, here are some tips on finding your differentiator. Let's walk you through the process. Let's show you how brands throughout history have successfully differentiated themselves. So I created something called the universe of differentiation, which is basically a universe of different planets. All 12 planets have a different way of differentiating themselves. I use examples of how brands throughout history have utilized those differentiators. We talk a little bit about who lives on each of those planets. So you could say, hey, I'm going to go to this planet. You know what? I was never funny. I'm a lawyer. Comedy doesn't play. We throw that planet out. There's 11 more to go. So it's a phenomenal starting point of kind of like putting your brain in places you never thought it would be or never thought it would go. Easily eliminating stuff that absolutely, there are some people that just sell off a menu. Like, hey, we're going to come in, we're going to market you. I don't even want to hear what you are. We're going to put you on social. We're going to make you an influencer. And it's like, no, that's not my business, right? So I tried to create this comprehensive guide called the Universe of Differentiation, with examples, with some steps, with some exercises to help you truly uncover some meaningful differentiation.
I really implore whoever can get their hands on it to really read the book. If the first like 3 pages don't like absolutely keep you in your seat, reread the first 3 pages. It's riveting, man, and I really applaud you. I'm sure it was a labor of love. One day I too aim to write a meaningful piece of work, and don't mind me if I come knocking on your door for a couple of tips. Speaking of tips, Strictly from Nowhere is really designed to be stories by bootstrappers for bootstrappers. And you're as bootstrappy as they come. And I'd love to pivot a little bit back into the business mindset. Um, I really have some questions. My path as a bootstrapped entrepreneur is like this. I'm up and down. I've hit the runway. I've like peaked the plane and the engines have gone out. And now we're nosediving. And like all of a sudden, you get an updrift and like the road of entrepreneurship, especially for those that are bootstrapping, is windy and steep and slick, but glorious. And I want to pivot a little bit into some wisdom around the path of entrepreneurship and specifically bootstrapping. So let's put our marketing hats away. I'd love to hear a little bit of the rawness. Um, you know, just some stories. If you could blast yourself back 25 plus years ago of what it really felt like to get your wings and to be as scrappy as possible in the beginning to really make a name for yourself and hang your hat on entrepreneurship. listen, you could have been commoditized. Like you could have worked in-house for an amazing brand, and you could have had a resume of all these different organizations that would have valued you and paid you handsomely and done all of that. But there's a draw to entrepreneurship. It's a deep need to be able to put your name on something. So I'd love to blast you back. Tell me a little bit about the origins of entrepreneurship for Jesse, maybe some of your influences, and what was it like in your earliest stages or earliest days of bootstrapping?
Yeah, so I'll probably jump past the early stages because I don't know. You could tell me if you agree, but the early stages are probably the funnest part, right? So I would walk into my tiny office in my mom's basement, and I would see this red light illuminating the ceiling, right? And that's like the bat signal in Gotham City. I had voicemails. People needed me. I was like, I literally pumped my fist, right? So the beginning days are invigorating. All those people on my voicemail system, I do a great job for them. They would refer me to their friends, and it was a big happy family. But a few years went by, and that same answering machine light all of a sudden filled me with horror. I was like, oh, more of these, complaints, problems, things that need to be done. And that happens for any entrepreneur out there. Is I do a little exercise when I talk to small business owners. I write down something on a piece of paper, and then I say, all right, I'm going to go around the room. I'm going to see if I can read your minds. Where do you get most of your business from? And one by one, word of mouth referrals. And I reveal that I read all their minds, right? So that small business mentality kind of expands once your marketing starts generating actual leads outside of your referral network. And that's where you have to actually turn your business into a business. You need processes, procedures, and things like that to get everything running properly and smoothly. Maybe you bring on a couple employees, you're able to delegate. And that is a task upon itself, right? Getting your machine working. And then what I experienced, which was one of the major factors in my pivot, was after I built my my plumbing. I said, all right, let's I got the machine, let's overload it. And like you said, throw bodies at it, just keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. But eventually those pipes that I laid, they were getting pressure tested, and leaks were forming, and I realized I had to rip out the entire plumbing and do a completely new system. But the problem was I was chasing more, and the bigger my sales, the lower my profit was. So the biggest year in sales I ever had, I almost had zero money in the bank. One of my coach called me to congratulate me on a bittersweet, like, congratulations on meeting your goal, but my heart goes out to you because I know you can't even go out to dinner. So yeah, I mean, it's invigorating at the start, and thank God it is, because a lot of people probably wouldn't continue if they flashed forward 5 years and had to start there. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. But those are the things, you need to have a breakdown before you have a breakthrough. So your business is never going to grow until you get so at capacity that balls start dropping, and that forces you to make systems, processes, procedures, etc. And then it's just a constant battle of, do I hire and then go out and get the work, or do I go out and get the work and then hire? And what if I don't do everything in the right window? It's never ending. In my book I reference the Kobayashi Maru, right? A no-win scenario. It's constant as an entrepreneur when you're in an aggressive growth phase. It's something that never gets easier. But as opposed to working, like you said, getting a job for a brand, I put in my time as a creative guy at the New York Islanders. And it was the same two colors, the same fonts, every ad, every T-shirt, every uniform. I'll take the marketing thrill seeking any day, entrepreneurial thrill seeking any day over mundane tasks over and over and over again.
It hopefully gets more accurate. And like I'm very much, again, in my pursuits is entirely for wisdom. And I'm always looking specifically for folks that are in related industries, totally unrelated industries. And there's always a common thread of, like, if it ever feels like it's getting easier, plan to close your doors. Like it should get more accurate. You should be able to harvest more profit. You should be able to forecast better. You should be able to this, that, and the other thing. But the goal is not for it to necessarily get easier. It's to become more durable and it's to become kind of future proof. And when you talk about, you know, having to recreate the plumbing, it's important to really think about the internal workings of a business. And as a leader, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you're still 100% owner of your business. It's hard as shit to redo your own plumbing. Like I'm not a plumber. I'm not, and to use it as just, a comparison. Like most business owners are not educated in restructuring, reorganizing, recreating processes. It comes from pressure and survival and reactiveness rather than proactiveness. So in my pursuits, it's always been about who's been down the path, what advice can I find to 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 reintroduce new systems, new processes, to create a business that's durable, to think about the future proofing of the organization. And what you're saying resonates with me entirely. But I also want to bring it back to balance because we're both clearly human. And I'm not a superhero nor an actual supervillain. I have no special powers. And, you know, I'm sure that you find similarly that I do that there are certain days where you just feel like your head is going to explode and you don't have the answers. And you need to turn to things that give you decompression and things that make you feel human and return you back to Jesse. And I know that you're an avid martial artist. I know that you're an oddities collector. I know that you're a fan of some incredible things like pro wrestling and UFC and just all sorts of wonderful stuff. You're a passionate public speaker and you have all of these different creative outlets. And I wonder if we could just talk a little bit about balance, especially for the entrepreneur. Um, what does it mean to have hobbies and pursue interests and what are some of those for you?
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, with all the hobbies I have, and I work with a genius coach. Every time I would stop, especially during the day, like during work hours, and I wasn't working, I'd feel guilty. So I'd be doing something I enjoy, but I should be, tending shop. And it probably took me a year working with my coach to get rid of that guilty feeling. And one of the genius things that he said was, if you think about music, there's notes that makes beautiful music. But if you just hit the notes over and over and over again, there's silence. There's notes that you don't play, right? So without the silence, it's just noise. So that noise, that those notes and that silence have to coexist. And as a creative person, we need time to do nothing. We need time to let our brain just roam into that space wherever it is to pull out, the crazy ideas. So it's definitely, another Kobayashi Maru where you're trying to run a business, but the reason you have the business is because you have these creative thoughts that you get by not running your business. You're in the shower, I have a hot tub, or every time I come in from the hot tub, my wife's like, okay, what'd you come up with this time? Because I just go and I go. So yeah, it's definitely a conundrum where, you get paid for the stuff you come up with while you're not working. So it's definitely something, but yeah, I mean, COVID, the pandemic was a huge help. Like I would go into work in the morning and I feel like I would forget to breathe because there's just so much work and the clock's ticking and all of a sudden with the pandemic, everyone kind of like took this exhale and they kind of left it out there where you don't have to work 8 hours nonstop, and the working from home is a huge thing. But yeah, I mean, I think everyone realized that we don't have to grind so hard. The world's not going to come to a stop. At least that's my perspective. And it makes taking those breaks during the workday a little less stressful, a little more guilt-free.
I find it very interesting. I consider you to be a mentor. I find it very interesting that you also have mentors and coaches, and let's talk a little bit about that because for me, I probably would have went belly up maybe 2 years ago without my coaching and mentorship. And I'm involved in entrepreneurship and leadership groups and lots of networking. And I take lots of just calls with random folks that have, different pursuits. And like I'm always again in pursuit of wisdom. Talk to me about coaching and mentorship and its impact to you as a business owner.
Yes, I mean, I think the most important example is, that everyone thinks of coaches in one way or another. A lot of them physical, right? Personal coach, personal trainer. The important thing to think about that is, while it's very important, you work with a personal trainer, you get big, you get muscular, you look great, but the second you stop that, it all goes away. We're on corporate coaching, professional coaching, those lessons stay with you forever and they only get stronger and stronger. Like you can't forget them even if you tried. So I place a higher value on that, if you want to call it mental coaching, corporate coaching, whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's not, it's as helpful as it is. It's not easy. Chael Sonnen, he's a UFC fighter, a great commentator, says if there's two people inside a business that align on everything, one of those guys is not needed, right? So having a coach that kind of challenges you, butts up against you, is a little abrasive, forces you to think harder, stronger, state your case, and that's exhausting. But you want to get better, you gotta sharpen your sword. So that's what I have to say about that. I've been working, funny. I met my coach on the floor of a dojo. We're both black belts. We kind of built a kinship, and that was probably 22 years ago. And he was a couple years ahead of me on being an entrepreneur. So he had years of knowledge that I needed, and still working together today in a bigger capacity now than we ever have in the past 22 years.
And it's to me, it's a little bit, I would say, apropos, self-fulfilling. You bring up the dojo. Cause of a Kind is a dojo. My hope and dream is that the best engineers in the world come to Cause of a Kind to spar, and everybody learns from everybody. I have a player coach mentality here. Every A player is paired with a fresh intern. Like everybody here is designed to spar together and enable mentorship and be both leader and student. And I find that the correlation to the actual dojo and finding mentorship and finding fresh ideas, even from folks that are less experienced. My organization is truly designed to pair all types of individuals. A white belt can easily come and participate directly alongside Sensei, which is my partner, Mike Rispoli. Like you can be in a pairing coding session and he learns equally from a first year student as that first year student is learning from him and all the way through. So I find it very much um, very, very interesting that your mentor, your coach comes from one of your passions, which is martial arts. And it's one of my passions too. It's something that like I aim to get my son involved in and something that's been with me throughout my whole life. And, I think that with hobbies and with perspectives and, things that invigorate us outside of our professional career come these analogies. And it was something that I played with for a really long time about like how do I want to differentiate? How do I define what Cause of a Kind is and what is our motion? And like we're not just a dev shop. Like I'm creating a business where folks of all walks of life, all varying skill sets, all different levels of experience come together to spar. And in nature, sparring is friendly. Like you're there to execute your skills and get beat and get better. And the goal is to inspire and mentor and coach and learn. And find it very, very kindred that we're both martial artists and in pursuit of all of that. And those reign true in not only our businesses, but our personal lives. Um, I'd like to round third base and take you home here. So I'd love for you to plug all the things that you're working on. I would love for people to know where they can find you. Um, I'd love to know uh, what are some of the things that you think that young people should be focused on as they're considering a path of entrepreneurship, and then of course tie that back into uh, your pursuits and what you're doing today.
Sure, sure. So my plugs, I am a frustrated filmmaker at heart. So if there is one call to action that I could enforce on everyone, look up Decommoditized on YouTube. If you like your marketing videos with explosions and lasers, I got you covered. So it's probably most overproduced marketing videos out there. You can find me Instagram, TikTok under Marketing Supervillain. Decommoditized.com for agency services and consulting, and Marketing for Supervillains, the book, on Amazon and anywhere else. And then what was the second part of the question?
So I want to tie it back to young people, and I think young people are going to be particularly interested in your production, in your methodology. I think it's incredibly unique. You wouldn't find this type of methodology in your classic education system or university sector. So I want to kind of focus on young people just for a moment. What is just some takeaway advice for the next generation of supervillain marketers?
Yeah, so I hate, I watch so much because I love movies. I watch so many behind the scenes, and I hate when it's like the cheesiest advice in the world. Someone gets up and saying, oh, you have any advice for a new filmmaker? What's your, and the director usually says, yeah, just go out and do it. Like, just do it and you'll get into it, and the passionate people will find you. And I always find that the cheesiest advice. However, if we're talking specifically to young people, I know I didn't have a North Star when I was young. So I'm going to lead this into finding your authentic self and kind of tying that into your business. Truthfully, I'm 21, 22, 23 years old. I had no North Star. I knew I was a weirdo, but if you told me to open a business based on my true authentic self, I wouldn't know where to start. So that advice, if we go back to the dojo analogy, punch a piece of wood 100 times, go out, get shitty jobs, do them to the best of your ability, and figure out what you hate, figure out what you love. And then from there, once you kind of like figure out your authenticity, try to put the logic aside, right? So one of the mistakes I made during my positioning exercises and decommoditizing myself is I did it 100% logical. Found a vertical, found a problem that I could solve, found a vertical with a ton of money being thrown around, and I was like, all right, I'm going to slip in here, going to solve everything, going to find my way to my road to riches. And at the end of the day, it just, I had to write a blog about it. It was like the worst homework in the world. I didn't want to be that guy, right? So one of the exercises that I live by is from this guy, Blair Enns. He says, all right, you want to find your differentiator, you want to find your specialization. Imagine you're backstage, the MC gets on the mic and says, ladies and gentlemen, today joining us is the world's leading authority on blank. Please welcome Justin Abrams. What's the blank? Like, what do you want to be known for? And when it came down to it, the vertical I chose, I didn't want to be known as that guy. I had no interest in it other than money. So find your authenticity. If you don't know who you are yet, that's completely fine. But go into the dojo and punch those boards, go get some jobs, and figure out where your North Star is.
Truly amazing advice. Probably advice that I would have really benefited from a really young age. But Jesse, I want to really thank you, man. You've been an incredible addition to my life, to my sphere, to my network. You and I met in the most organic way possible. You were literally inconspicuously sitting in the audience of a presentation that we were delivering on adopting and adapting to AI for small businesses. And it is matriculated into a great relationship, and there's a lot of respect in both directions. And I appreciate you and your wisdom and your experience, and I think the world, at least my little world, is better off with you in it. And I really appreciate your time for today and your participation in this episode of Strictly.
Thanks so much, man. I'm gonna walk around with a giant ego today. Thank you for the puff up, and yeah, the world is better with a few more supervillains in it. So thank you, thank everybody watching.